Di Maria, Lionel Messi, Messi's hitting. Oh! That's what they came for!
This could be the most dramatic story of the season. It's Torres to give Chelsea a place in the Champions League final.
Not bad, thank you. How are you? You okay?
I'm good, mate. Good, mate. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Likewise, mate. Always a pleasure.
Yes, indeed, mate. I don't know where to start after today. Don't even start.
Well, I literally saw you then on the bottom, and I was like, nice jumper, really nice, nicely kitted out. I was like, you're also a very brave man for wearing it, mate.
Yeah, I probably will regret it after once this episode gets released. Yeah.
For sure, mate. For sure. Well, before we get started, mate, and we jump into things, talk me through your idea so I'm very, very clear on it, so I can support you as best as possible.
Yes, no problem. So a little idea that I just had was pretty much getting pictures up of old Premiership players or whatever, and it's your little job, if you like, Luca, to see if you can find, well, if you know who they are, and if you know who they are, you get a point for each correct answer.
And in terms of these pictures that are going up then, mate, for to get a point to get the answer, are you going to supply the pictures and present?
Yes,
Fab. And do you have some prepared tonight?
yes, I do.
Fab, man. So we'll start off you tonight, and then for next week, I'll make sure I've got some ready for you then, mate.
No pressure.
No pressure, mate. Well, I'm looking forward to it, and we'll definitely have some fun with this. When you said it and I was listening through, I was like, I've definitely got a list of players in my mind, and one of them is actually in the presentation tonight. And you might not expect him to be part of some of the stuff that we chat about. So I'm looking forward to bringing that in. So again, as always, our thoughts are in sync no matter what we're doing without chatting, mate. I love it.
Absolutely, mate. We're very telepathic.
Telepathic, mate. That is for sure. That's why I can't wait for us to meet up and actually be nice to have you manage a game alongside me in terms of some of the ideas I've got going forward. So I think that'll be very interesting to start planning and looking forward to, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait. Sounds
Neither
really
can I,
good.
mate. The more I think about it, the more ideas I have about it. I'm really looking forward to maximise when I see you, mate. So it'll be good for sure, for sure. So
Top
we're
man.
starting today's episode, mate. Obviously, we've just spoken about Spurs losing 1-0 to Arsenal. What's your thoughts? What's your feelings? How did the game go? I only saw it by updates.
Very disappointing. Had time to let it sink in somewhat. I think it it might sound like excuses, but it's not in a sense. I think quite a lot of people would agree. It was a very stop-start game. The referee didn't let the flow of match go. There was a lot of bookings in that game, which you could say for a neutral was good to see. But yeah, there was some questionable decisions in there from the referee. But fair play to Arsenal. They came with a game plan and they kept us frustrated, kept us at bay, and they took their chance with Gabriel with a bullet header, and they come away with 3 points, much to our sins. But on balance of play, yeah, Arsenal deserved it, though it hurts me to say it.
And I think that's what they needed as well, because I was looking at the table yesterday. I was like, if they get a win tomorrow, it'll elevate them to second, where they're currently at the moment. So they're 2 points off City. They've been undefeated in 4 games, but I know we're only 4 games in, right, mate? But if we look at Spurs, they're currently sat 13th, 1 win, 1 draw, 2 losses. They've scored 6, conceded 4 with 2 positive goal difference, right? It's not been the greatest of starts, but again, we're only 4 games in. So at this point, you starting to worry. At this point, do you go, do you know what? Why are we even considering talking about 4 games? Like, what is your position as a fan when it comes to that league role?
I think this is it. Uh, after today, I thought with the lineup that Ange Postecoglou put out to start with, it would have been enough to have, I thought, put us on front foot to start the game off in the right way. In fact, it didn't really. I mean, I don't know if you saw the starting lineup for Ange that he put out today, but it was quite interesting that Benton Core Maddison and Kulusevski all played in middle, and with Son, Johnson, Solanke up front. So on paper, attacking, but we're just not scoring for goals, and it is a concern, Luca. I think it's early doors, but we're not converting our chances. Yes, we've got to give it time, but you just feel that for more games that go on like this, we're not picking up results, and then you could start questioning whether Angie's position is under threat, really, because we're not getting the results, and that's how brutal Premiership is, and especially with Daniel Levy. I'm not an Ange out. I still believe that he's the right man for the job, and I'm going to stick by that. But something's got to change, and there's just something within our play at the moment. We're just too predictable. There's not really enough intensity from our build-up play. I mean, when you compare from the first 4 games this season to the first 7 from last season, it's such a contrast. Yes, we've got to adjust that there's new players there, new squads, younger players. But I mean, like we've signed Solanke from Bournemouth, we've signed Odebear from a relegated Burnley. You know, it's concerning times for Spurs, I think, and European football. I just don't think we can even entertain the idea if we can't get it right at the top end of the pitch first.
There's a lot of sort of talking points within the Spurs at the moment in terms of, the player transfers that he made, Solanke not being in that form at the moment, the current league position, questions over the manager again. Obviously, Daniel Levy comes into those sort of discussion points, and how quickly will he act, how much time will he give is always a consideration, because you don't know whether he is going to give that time or whether he's going to pull the trigger button. And I think that's some of the uncertainty you have around your model at Spurs, but it'll be interesting to see, dependent on how you continue to perform or pick up points over the next few weeks, how that will play, or what the estimation for the rest of your season will play out to look like.
Absolutely. I mean, it's as well, which concerns myself and probably other Spurs fans, is you see Europa League football, it can be a bit of distraction playing from Thursday night to Sunday, especially now it being a league format in terms of European competitions that are being run this season. There's going to be more competitive edge to it. So by nature, Ange will probably have to name his strongest available 11 that he can play to qualify for the next stages. But as we know, with any team that goes into the Europa League, it's a real struggle for them to play again on Sunday. And if we're not picking up results now before European football, that's another concern. No, we've got more depth in the squad. I'm not denying that. But I mean, we've got Rodrigo Bentancur that's in a situation that could be on a lengthy ban from what happened in the summer. We've got a lot of young players there that are exciting. I'm not denying that. But again, something's got to change. I don't know what's got to change. Ange, don't change Ange. But the thing is if Levy was to say enough is enough, who do you get in that's better? Can't think of anyone that's better at the moment for that squad of players, really, to get them in for Spurs' way of playing the style of football and for motto of today is to do.
And I think that's part of the next sort of discussion point for Spurs, if they are going to go in that direction. Who do you even start to identify? Again, do you start to look at, say, like Thomas Frank internally at the Premier League? But then again, is he a repeat of Nuno Espirito Santo, where you're looking internally, perhaps he's not a world beater, then comes into Spurs and really isn't an upgrade on Ange Postecoglou, and perhaps his may a little bit of a downgrade in a way. And I love Thomas Frank, right, as you know, and I think it's harsh to say these words, but is in reality, when we look at Postecoglou's record and the things that he's won, he's been a national team manager and he won the league with Celtic. And I know a lot of people argue that with Celtic, that they walked the league, etc. But when you look at, say, a manager who's got a lot of achievements, then you bring in a manager who doesn't, again, a bit like Nuno, it's a bit of a sideways move for Spurs to go and make that. So then who else do you start to identify? You got Marco Silva in that league. I don't think even is on that consideration for the quality of Spurs. Then you go and look at someone like Brendan Rodgers, who has had success, has done it in the Premier League, has done all right with Leicester, managed a big club like Liverpool. has done well at Celtic consistently, or do you go and look at like Ruben Almiron, who's managing Sporting at the moment and the success that he's having there? And there's a lot of sort of consideration points in terms of what direction the Spurs move in if they're going to have another manager after Postecoglou.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. I I wouldn't be against if Spurs even considered going down the same model what Arsenal did with Arteta. You know, I mean, we were saying about Ryan Mason and everything like that. I'm not saying that he's the right man, Ryan Mason, but that sort of model, young coach, hungry, wants to have a bit of time to put his own style. I mean, I have to say, I've been watching football for a numerous of years now, and I've never known an Arsenal side to be so defensively sound as they are now, as they are like under Arteta. It's unreal. You know, they really frustrate teams. And once upon a time, you could always used to say, well, with Arsenal, there was a bit of maybe a mentality thing that they wouldn't be up there near the top and everything like that. They kept bottling it with Wenger, as they say. But by and large, I mean, Arteta's getting them performing on a consistent basis now. And a lot of credit has to go to that, because I know it gone a bit Pete's on when Arteta first arrived. But look, I mean, we're second season with Ange. It is going to take time. With Pep, he didn't win a Premiership in first season with City. We have got to hold on to that. But the difference is, I suppose, with City, they knew what they were bringing in with Guardiola. With Arsenal, they've given a bit of time to Arteta for him to adjust, to find his feet, and let him crack on. I don't know if it's like that with Daniel Levy and Spurs, and that's always been my concern supporting football club, because, I mean, again, I've supported Spurs all these years. We've gone through Harry Redknapp, we've gone through Martin Jol, we've gone through, in my lifetime, Villas-Boas. We've gone through Poch, we've gone through Mourinho, Conte, Nuno, as you just said, Luca. Now we've gone through with Ange, but I've never wanted someone to succeed more than Ange, because I just love his aura. I love how his story of coming into football, really, his father relationship that he had with him. You know, it's a unique sort of story in the Premiership in that respect. And that's why I want him to succeed, because he knows how to do it. It's just this is my only last bit of criticism that I'm going to say on Ange at the moment is, with Celtic, yeah, it's between them and Rangers. You could say for Scottish League. However, it's still like he's got that sort of mentality in there, like it's a Scottish League, and he's got to change it up, because he's only stubborn with one way of play, and he's got to adapt. City have done it this season already with Ederson, as it showed yesterday. Boot the ball on, do something different. They've succeeded. They're willing to adapt. Pep's willing to adapt different systems. So is Arteta, for that matter. It works. And just sticks with the same, if you like.
And I think that's, the difference between perhaps a world-class manager, right, and then the difference between the rest of them. But I think you have to be tactically astute in terms of what you're doing, because we're even seeing it at the bottom end of the table. I know you're a big Sean Dyche fan, right, and you're sort of in the camp that he will see the season out and Everton to stay up. And I said, I think they're going down, and I don't think he'll last. And some of the points this week has been around new ownership coming into Everton, and it seems as if they're ready to replace him as soon as they're installed, in terms of being at Everton and what they want to deploy. So he has been very unfortunate with American owners coming in, because they came in at Burnley. They gave him a little bit of time, sacked him. And then obviously now it's sort of a repeat of scenarios whereby it looks like American owners are coming in at Everton and they're willing to sack him straight away. But it's one of those, right, where, again, Everton have lost their last 4. They've conceded 13. The last 2 weeks, they've started 2-0 up, and they've lost both of those leads. They've only scored 4 in the last 2 weeks. They just haven't gained traction yet, and still we're early on in the season. Still, he might go, right, there's a point in game 5 if they draw. We might pick up another another point in game 6, and then we might have a win. And suddenly they gain a little bit of traction with 5 points. But again, it's still to be desired, because the moment you leave it is the moment you start getting a bit of a relegation scrap, especially towards the bottom end. Because if you look at anywhere down from West Ham right now, West Ham are 14th and they've only got 4 points. Leicester have got 2. Crystal Palace have got 2. Ipswich have got 2. Wolves have got 1. Norwich, Southampton haven't got any. Everton have got none. And then even Spurs are on 4 points. So right now it's a very tight 7-place sort of leg race between that relegation. And you've got a young manager in there, in Russell Martin, managing Southampton. You've got Gary O'Neill at Wolverhampton. You've got Kieran McKenna at Ipswich. You've got Glasner at Crystal Palace. You've got Steve Cooper at Leicester. You've got Julian Lopetegui. So when you look at the different qualities of these managers, some are very inexperienced, i.e. Russell Martin, Kieran McKenna. A little bit of Gary O'Neill still sits in that camp. Glasner sits in there, I suppose. And then you've got Lopetegui, who's been successful as a manager. And you look at the different variation of quality, that's quite a tough end of the table for 7 teams.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, the Premiership is so competitive. I mean, you think, oh, by looking on it, again, that phrase on paper, but you think, oh, well, Ipswich are going to go down as a certainty or whatever. But they're not. I don't know if I can say this on broadcast, so bleep it out if you can, but they're not mugs. They can't. They don't just turn up and roll over. They turn up with a game plan. And yesterday, I mean, they got a clean sheet at Brighton. I mean, if you would have put that to me for the start that they had this season, for winning against United and for draw at Arsenal and the win at Everton, I would have said that Brighton would have comprehensively beat them again on paper. But, it's a very competitive division, and that's what makes it so fun to watch on all sides to it. But then it's very stressful when you get in Spurs roped into that mix at the moment.
And that's what I mean. Again, it's still very early on, and I think Spurs won't be in that relegation battle, right? But even still, there's only 7. There's 7 teams within it at the moment, and the point difference isn't massive. But it's good to see the likes of Ipswich holding out again, a clean sheet against a very strong Brighton, who have had a very strong start. I was quite surprised at the Southampton United result. I thought Southampton perhaps would have scraped a draw there or took some in. But United gained a bit of traction in their performance and went on to win 3-0. But I think one of the talking points from yesterday, right, mate, is Nottingham Forest, for the first time since 1989, I believe, off the top of my head, that they beat Liverpool at Anfield. And I think that's a big result. Again, we're still early days and Liverpool have started off very well. But I think that's the difference between dropping points and is what's going to win you the title at the moment, where Arsenal and City are very, very close at the moment. And again, you have to, Liverpool are still within that, but I don't think they can afford to drop points with losses like they have at Nottingham Forest. Again, they've still got that argument first season in, transition from Klopp to Slot. But a big talking point, and I think it's good for Nuno in terms of that win away at Anfield.
Yeah, absolutely. It might prove a few doubters wrong. I mean, I had Forest as, for me, was one of the teams to go down. After yesterday, that's probably a real statement that they've made. I mean, they've made a really good start to this season, actually. Credit where it's due. I mean, it's sort of, again, Spurs fans' nightmare that bloody, sorry, but Nuno is over. Clear ahead with Forest at the moment than where Angie's with Spurs. But I think this is it. That's what makes the Premiership so diverse, so different, is that everyone can beat anyone on their day. And to get a result like that at Anfield is phenomenal. And also to keep a clean sheet as well at Anfield, I must say, is another good feature to have for their season names, I suppose, under Nuno Espirito Santo. But there is going to be bumps in the road when it comes to new managers with like Carney Slot, let's face it, as it's shown yesterday. But how will Liverpool react to that? Because that's the first time that they've had a setback under him, isn't it? So
And I think that's the interesting talking point is, what do they do? What do they take into the week forward? And how do they respond to that? I think that's the next phase of sort of analysing Liverpool in terms of their performance and what's going to follow from that. But when you sort of touch upon that point, right, for Nuno Espirito Santo, they currently sat seventh. They got 4 games, 2 wins, 2 draws, scored 4, conceded 2 goal difference in the positive, and 8 points at the moment. So it's a nice positive start because I like Nottingham Forest as a club. I'd like them to sort of stay up. I want them to become a regular Premier League team as such. And they had a very tough end of the season last year after they sacked Cooper. And I think they were very, very lucky to have remained in the Premier League. But they've come out hitting at the moment. They seem to be off to an okay start at the moment. And they're in a good position to keep building. But when you say about former Spurs managers, right, you've got Nuno Espirito Santo. He beat Liverpool 1-0 yesterday with Nottingham Forest. They're currently sat 7th. You've got Antonio Conte managing Napoli, who currently just won 4-0 against Cagliari. And then you've got Jose Mourinho managing Fenerbahce, who won 2-0 earlier today, top of the Turkish Super League. So you've got 3 managers who all seem to be doing quite all right, who Spurs have sacked at the moment, whilst you're currently sat in that discussion point around relegation for the early start in the Premier League at the moment.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, you said all them 3 teams and 3 managers. And what's happened? They've all won, yeah, but they've all kept clean sheets as well. We can't seem to catch a cold at the moment. Can't even keep a clean sheet. It's yeah, it's really bonkers, and I think that's what I mean. Nuno's shown what he could do at Wolves. Let's face it, he achieved some really good things with Wolves, but I think it got to a stage where it sort of runs stale, and that's what I suppose alarmed me with Spurs today. Actually, Luca, was that with Ange, or with how he was trying to play, it just seemed really stale. And I don't know why, and that's just a bit of a alarm bells really, because we're only in our 2nd season under him, and we've got new recruits in there.
And I think it's that style of play which you talked about, right, mate? And it's about, not going stale. It's about keeping fresh. And I was watching some of the preseason content released by Spurs, and they had a bit of a backroom staff reshuffle after Chris Davies left. They seem to have brought in some experienced coaches, but maybe that's part of why they're not hitting momentum a little bit at the moment, because Steve Davis is currently manager of Birmingham. He's won 3 and 4 games. He's drawn the other game, so he's undefeated at the moment. So I think when you lose someone of his caliber, who seems to have got off to a good start with Birmingham, I think that can have a little bit of an impact in terms of what you're doing internally at the club. And I think the same can be said right now for Birmingham, which we'll come back to a little bit later on, as Ashley Cole has just left them to join the England setup full time. But I think when you lose, backroom staff who are quality, maybe that does have a bit of an impact, but then that shouldn't be an excuse for a Premier League team in that sort of perspective and argument, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the coaching teams are very instrumental to set up. I mean, with Chris Davies, he was with Ange at Celtic, wasn't he? I believe.
Yeah.
So he's followed him around everywhere, I suppose. And good luck to Chris Davies. I hope it really works out for him at Birmingham. From what I heard through reports and that, he was a big figure at Spurs last season. But this is situation is, as you say, new people come in. We've got quite a young coaching setup. When I say young coaching setup, we've still got Ryan Mason in his trade. We've got Mal Jedinak that's in that has played at a top level. I'm not disputing that. But again, for someone that used to, I suppose, have a knack with when it comes to set plays in his playing career, for having bullet headers and that, and used to be quite defensively sound, I'm surprised we've not put him on something like that, because we've gave that job to Nick Montgomery, I believe, that was at Hibernian. Now, I'm not, again, disputing coaches getting a chance, because obviously we're all for it. Both of us for that, Luca, for coaches to have chances and stuff. But I don't know, there's something going in, as you say, you just said, something internally is going on with Spurs, but I think it comes from the top. And that doesn't help with Daniel Levy, as we've just touched on. But then as well, I mean, every manager that you hear that comes in, or even player for that matter, comes in and say, "Wow, what an amazing ground! Wow, what amazing training facilities!" Well, yeah, but that's not going to help you. um, that's not the only thing that's going to help you win titles or cups or whatever. And I think if they're just looking at that as a mentality thing of training ground facilities of class and for grounds of class, then it just shows where the mentality is within the club at the moment. I think, yes, something's got to. It goes back to that point. Something's got to change, but what? I don't know. I mean, it's very unusual that Spurs have been on TV 3 times already this season. Not once have I seen footage of Daniel Levy on there, and yet he used to be pictured left, right, and centre being on Sky. He was quite happy to be on Sky and show his face.
I think it's very interesting time surrounding Spurs because I think even a couple of weeks ago, I think they were looking at potential investors going in at Spurs, and how that will look will be an interesting sort of position. And I think it's definitely one that is being considered over the season, but I think it's a situation to monitor and one to go from there, mate, which is going to probably come up again in some of our future episodes, which is going to be interesting, especially from this point. As you talk about Spurs mentality, culture, the current position, how Ange is currently sitting within his role, the current performance of Spurs, whether they make any January signings. So I think it's a very interesting time to follow Spurs over the next few weeks to months and how that's going to look. But just to touch upon Chris Davies there, mate, Birmingham are playing Wrexham tomorrow, so I think that'll be a very good League One game to watch for sure. But just touching upon some former managers who we seem to bring up in conversations every now and then, mate. So yesterday we look at the results. It was a very good result for Aston Villa, coming back and winning 3-2 against Everton, currently challenging for that position. Chelsea just scraping by with a 1-0 win against Bournemouth, which again needs to be improved on. When you drop down to the Championship, you got Steve Parker, who had a very good 1-0 win with Burnley. Again, has that sort of relationship with Spurs of a longer extent. Derby beat Cardiff 1-0, where they're really struggling at the moment. Middlesbrough have drawn 1-1 with Preston, so not a bad result for Michael Carrick and Paul Heckingbottom. Sunderland, who are top of the table, lost 3-2 to Wayne Rooney's Plymouth, which was a good result, their first win in the league. So very interesting time to be following along with him. Mansfield and Nigel Clough's team won 2-1 in League One. So just a little touch upon there for a result that took place. Darren Ferguson 1-1 with Lincoln. And then we continue. Nathan Jones, who was at Southampton, 1-1 against Shrewsbury. Newport lost heavily 4-0 to Swindon Town yesterday. So not a great day for Newport fans. For sure. Salford beat Cheltenham 2-1. The Salford owned by Gary Neville, etc. Cheltenham managed by Mike Flynn, former Newport County manager. So some interesting results up and down the tables, just to touch upon. But there's one result which I really wanted to highlight, and that was a return of a former Premier League manager who had a positive result in his first opening game in charge. And this is someone who's returned to the to management. This man here, Steve Bruce, the appointment at Blackpool. He was obviously interviewed by Jamaica, which we touched upon the other week, which was a very strange sort of interview at the time. But he's back in football after a few years out, and he's managing Blackpool. They started off with a good 2-1 win yesterday, which is a very positive start against Exeter. But when he's dropped down to the league, he's managing, Blackpool. And we've seen the same with Mark Hughes a couple of years ago, where he dropped down to manage Bradford. Very unfortunate to miss out on playoffs. But when you see a manager who hasn't had the chance to return to the Premier League or around that level, and they've dropped down now to the Championships, when you see this kind of appointment, mate, what do you think of it?
It's back to that life of football manager simulation time, isn't it?
That's it, mate. That's it.
I think that's one contrast from Jamaica to Blackpool. It's going to be a good test for Blackpool. I mean, they got rid of Neil Critchley quite early on, and they must have been lining Bruce up or something, because that is some statement to make to the league. We know what Bruce can do. It is a shock that he's dropped down that low. But as I saw, I think he said in an interview after the game yesterday or before the game, when you have a bug in football, you just can't seem to get rid of it, and that's why he wanted to get back involved with Blackpool. And I think that would be a very good appointment to get them over the line into the Championship. And even if they was to get into the Championship, they could compete again because of his experience, his connections in the game is very important. What do you think of the appointment?
I think it's a good appointment because of the experience that he has. For him, obviously, he still has that bug to get into football again, like we said about the managers who sit in that sort of category, i.e., Mark Hughes, i.e., Steve McLaren, etc., who have most recently got into jobs. And I think it's good for him the fact that he's got a job. I think Blackpool. There's a little bit of pressure to go in and perform after so many years out, and especially from an internal club point of view, because if they get that appointment wrong and they underperform and they get relegated or they're fighting, then that is literally the nail in his coffin going, right, yep, you're done. You had a few years out, you dropped down, didn't work out, look at the position we ended up in, and bang, he's finished in football then. And I think then it's pressure for clubs who make those appointments to go, why did we go for someone like him? Why didn't we go for someone like Chris Davies, for example? But that's where the very fickle fan base of football comes in, because you could argue and going, why have we gone for Chris Davies, Wayne Rooney, young managers who perhaps don't have that much experience? But then you try and appoint someone like Steve Bruce, and then you even look at other managers like Steve Evans, who manages like Stevenage, and you're like, right, why are clubs appointing those managers? They're dinosaurs, they're finished. So you can never win with football fans, mate. But when I saw this, when I was like, do you know what? That's actually not a bad appointment for Blackpool.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't know how long the deal was. Was it 2 or 3 years? I can't remember.
I think it's a 3-year deal, I believe.
Which is quite long term, really, for their projects. And I suppose I hope it works out for him because I do like Brucey, though his football can be a bit dinosaurish. He's he's one of them good guys in football that you just want to see do well. And after all his personal issues that gone in his personal life, I think it's an inspiration that he feels that he's willing to fight again and pick up the sword and go and get managing again.
Absolutely, mate. And I think it'd be interesting to keep on top of those results and another team to sort of track every week. But definitely an interesting appointment for sure. Now, when we look at appointments, we got Ashley Cole, who we touched upon earlier on, and he's been appointed full time at the FA. I think this is a very positive move for the national side. I think it's great for Coley because he's built a very good reputation as a coach since he started out. And it was only a few weeks ago I was reading when Birmingham put the post out going, congratulations, Ashley Cole will share the job part-time with his duties here at Birmingham and with the England national team. And there was a lot of positive response by Birmingham fans saying, well done, congratulations, and all these sort of positive responses. And a few people were obviously like, oh, do you know what? I wish he just focused on Birmingham full-time, etc. And now a few weeks on have passed. It looks like England have wanted him to come on board full-time, and he's made that decision to step up to the national team. I think this is a positive move. I think it's great to see for the national setup. I think it's going to be very interesting again whether Lee Carsley lands that job permanently, whether there's going to be other considerations that come into play, i.e. Eddie Howe, and whether the situation at Newcastle unfolds and whether that's what the national team are waiting to review at the moment, whether they're going to look for Pep Guardiola and how the situation, because we know the 115 cases starts tomorrow, and how the end of that season comes out to play, and whether they try to go big time with getting Guardiola, whether they look at someone like Graham Potter in that role, or whether they look elsewhere. But I think this is a positive move for the national team.
Absolutely, and I mean, what an outstanding football CV Ashley Cole's got from his coaching and his playing career. I mean, if he was one of them players, you'd be really inspired to be working under him, and it really will be a good move for him. Whoever takes over with England, whether that be Lee Carsley, Pep, Graham Potter, Eddie Howe, he's got a lot of plaudits from Birmingham. I think I've said to you before, but one of my Birmingham mates has said really good things about him as well. So it just shows the harder you work in silence, the bigger the rewards will be in football. And Ashley Cole has certainly done that, and I wish him all the very best with that new role.
I completely agree, mate. And it'd be interesting to see whether he ever turns his hand to be a manager at any point, which I think would be interesting to see how he has that position and takes that on board and what his style of player looked like, whether he'll be in the same kind of boat as Rooney, whether he'll be successful, whether he's actually more of a backroom member of staff. So be interesting to see whether he actually becomes number one himself. But I think that's one to consider. But we didn't record last week because of the national period, and there wasn't a lot going on in terms of football at that time. But in terms of reflecting back upon how England have played over their first two opening games, the lineups that have come into play, what were your thoughts on the national team, how they played, who they selected, Lee Carsley's performances? Is it looking bright at the moment? What's the sort of feeling around the national team at the moment?
I think it's still early days. Not that it's because I know we've had this debate whether Carsley's the right man or not, but I still think it's early days. I think he still needs a few more games. Handbrakes seem to be taken off a bit more in a sense of football. It was encouraging signs, and especially to come away from Ireland, that can be a bit of a tricky fixture, really. With going over to Ireland with his background, with his heritage, and everything like that, that would have done him for a world of good. But I did find it interesting when he said a quote. I think I can't remember word for word, but it was along the lines of, "It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It's given me a bit more confidence now." Or something like that, wasn't it? Was it after the Ireland win, or was it after the last game that they had? I've just felt that was quite an interesting choice of words, really, to come out to say to the press when you're managing a big national football team. Really, what did you think of that?
I think when you say it there like that, right, mate, and it doesn't fill you with confidence when you sort of listen to these the comments by these types of managers. And I think that's the sort of position whether you go, I don't really want to be the number one, or whether he is sort of taking the pressure off himself by destabilizing it a little bit, trying to build a bit of rapport with the media. I think it's yet to be seen a little bit. Obviously, it didn't go down well. The fact that he didn't sing the national anthem. There's been a lot of sort of debates over these decisions, and even ex-pros like Gary Neville said they didn't even sing the national anthem when they played. So where's the argument for Lee Carsley in that respect? And I think, that's a bit of a fair argument coming from an ex-national team player when you're in that sort of boat. But it's one of those where the FA go, oh, do you know what? That's not good media handling. That's not something you should be saying. And we need someone like a Graham Potter, like an Eddie Howe, who can sit regularly in front of the media, who know how to get along with the media. Whether they go for that type of manager, I think there's a lot to still be considered over the rest of Carsley's reign. I think the position in terms of the number one spot in England is still very uncertain at the moment. But when you look at how he started and the players he's gone with, and Anthony Gordon's had starts, Jack Grealish has had starts, I think in his mind he's got a way of playing, he's got a way of bringing players in. Obviously, he's called up some of the younger players, which he knows, which I think is great as an England fan. But when you're looking at like Grealish, I think that's a statement, Matt, going, yeah, you haven't played regularly for City. You were dropped in the Euros by Southgate, but here I am picking you and starting you. I think that's a big statement. And again, we have to consider there was a lot of players out injured still, which is going to be an even bigger headache if they return to full fitness on the second half of the squad selection, i.e. Dominic Solanke, Ollie Watkins, who's out of form a little bit. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I think, is picking up a little bit of form, so maybe a consideration in the squad selection. But when you look at the quality of players who are still missing, the ones that he has picked so far, he's been very lucky that these players have been out injured. But I think it's that sort of statement of then looking at that balance of going, right, I started Grealish because this is what I want to do as manager. Whether that's very bold or whether it's going to backfire and go, why did you start him? I think it seems to be very positive at the moment. But again, very interesting times at England, mate.
Yeah, it is very interesting times because, I mean, even with James Maddison that missed out on the Euro squad, he's another one to consider. But I think with it being interesting, I think he needs to be given a few more games to see where we're at when these players do come back fit, a bit more into form, what he does decide to do. It's very interesting what path we're going to go down because they are remaining tight-lipped about it, and they don't seem to be in a hurry too much to a point. Whether that's because they are waiting for something like Pep to come available, or they are waiting to see what Carsley can do. I suppose we've got to trust their judgment and what they feel. But I think personally, I think they are going to go down the route of either Lee Carsley, Eddie Howe, or Graham Potter.
I'm in the same camp now with you, mate. I think it's definitely one of those three. And I'll be very disappointed if we go and appoint Eddie Howe. Just not a big fan, not in his camp whatsoever. I just don't think he brings that charisma to the national team. But in terms of managers and someone who's not had a great managerial game today, and that is former Man United and Arsenal player Robin van Persie. So on his opening game, a 9-1 heavy loss managing his side. Not a great start for him in terms of the life of management.
No, that must have been a rude awakening for him, really.
Definitely, mate. Tough.
Yeah, I think he said after the game as well, he won't let it mentally scar him after having that performance and result today. But again, this is where we start to learn about managers and their dynamics, how they go about things. And this will, I suppose, even though it's so early on in the season, this will now test Van Persie on another level of how he can galvanise his squad to pick up and go again to go better for their next match, you know?
Absolutely, mate. So again, it's going to be one of those, whether it works out to be a manager for him, whether it's just a bad start, whether he changes his style of play, as we touched upon earlier on, but not a great start of him in the life of management. I just thought it was interesting before coming on. I saw that. I thought, we will include that as definitely a bit of an interesting talking point. But in terms of former players, and this links with United being a good transition. So Juan Mata, he has just recently signed for a team out in Australia, and he's looking forward to his new journey. So he's still playing. He's playing in the Asian Champions League. Always been a very underrated player, I believe, Juan Mata, mate.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He was quality at Chelsea, and I'm amazed when he'd gone to United, he didn't get more game time. I mean, it was outstanding. I was staggered that he didn't get more game time. He can create something out of nothing, that lad, and he was pivotal in Chelsea's success over for recent years and everything like that. Personally, from seeing it from the outside, but you must have loved him at Chelsea.
Good player, mate. I was a big fan of his, especially with some of the players that we had around us when we had Hazard, Mata, and Oscar within that, which was called Mazakar or Mazkar. And touching upon that, we got Oscar, who's been out in China for the last 7 or 8 years. His contract's coming to an end this year, and he said he's looking forward to a new challenge and moving on. So it'll be interesting to see whether a European club snaps him up and how that looks for the last couple of years of his career, especially after being out in China for 7 years. When we saw that big Chinese influx, we saw a lot of players move there very quickly, like we've seen in Saudi. Didier Drogba, Nicolas Anelka, Oscar, Ramirez, Paulino. The list went on and on in terms of some of these players. Now, some of these players didn't last very long. They lasted a year, maybe 2 years max. But Oscar's been out there for a good duration of time and has given that a go. So when you look at players like Juan Mata and Oscar, who sort of sit in that same bracket of very underrated players and still generate some traction into their career, I think these were 2 players who were great for Chelsea, and we were very lucky to have him. And I think Juan Mata would have been someone who would have suited Spurs for a good period of time as well, I believe.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's a coup where he's gone over to Australia. If I knew that he'd gone up, say I lived in Australia, I'd be tracking every game that they had because I just want to see him play live. I think the guy's a magician.
And I think, the Australian fans are very lucky to see someone like him go over there and play that style of football. But transitioning on to that continued talk, right, of perhaps almost forgotten players like we touched upon on the start. And this is someone who is retired, someone who's gone in a bit of a different direction of life decisions. And I was very shocked to even see that he looks like this. Anderson, who played for Man United, he's currently had an arrest warrant issued for him after failing to pay child support of $300,000 in terms of what he owes. So he's currently having a lot of pressure at the moment. So at the bottom here, it reads, Anderson became a defendant after a complaint from RS Public Prosecutor's Office about a scheme that allegedly diverted $35 million from an industry and the stock exchange, laundering money through cryptocurrency operations. Anderson was one of 8 people indicted. Now, what a sort of career turn is that?
That is huge. Isn't it? That is a huge career turn. Wow. He wasn't a bad baller either, was he?
That's what I mean, mate. He was again another underrated player who sits in that same bracket of Juan Mata, who played for United. I was very shocked to even see, the weight that he's picked up whilst he's been retired. But
Mm.
when you're sort of involved in cryptocurrency, stock exchanges, in child support, there's a lot which is sort of taking place in your life because of the finances which you once earned, and perhaps being at the forefront of the Premier League for a period of time.
Absolutely. Do you think though that I mean, a lot of these players, obviously, when you're in the top flight, earn mega bucks, but sometimes I just don't think they know what they're doing with it, or they need to have more education about the outside world more. I know that sounds a bit naive, maybe, but I think because they're used to earning big sums, they feel that they can find other ways to find big sums. I.e., if they're saying with cryptocurrency here, it's a very. I just find it a bit sad, really, when you see that players have had such a great playing career, if you like, and then they're involved in situations like this, really.
No, I agree with you, mate. And I sit in the same camp. And I'm just trying to think of someone who else was involved in cryptocurrency in terms of. I think I was reading yesterday John Terry and some of the thread in terms of some of the decisions he's made in his career. And I think at one time he was under investigation from the FBI as he set up some virtual kids club, football club, and it dealt within cryptocurrency. And I think it got shut down very quickly. And he was allegedly running a scam as such, or it was labeled a scam. And I was reading that yesterday. So I think that's what it is terms of, right, there's a great business opportunity. Some, well-presented, dodgy businessmen have come to say, right, you invest $1 million, you're going to have returns of 100 million or something. And these footballers are going to go, yeah, I'll take that. When in fact, it sets them up in these sort of positions and they get a little bit greedy. If that thing with John Terry was true, it sits in there. Obviously, we saw what happened with Sam Allardyce. We've seen what's happened here with Anderson. And then Ronaldinho in terms of what his issues were financially years ago. And I think it's always a shame to see when you see these players have these amazing careers and then these sort of outcomes and impacts from after their career happens. So it is a great shame to see, mate.
Absolutely. And I think if you're at the top flight like Anderson, John Terry, you think your career is over, but you still always be out in the media light. And that's one thing I suppose that must be hard in a sense if you're living at the top flight. You're being watched all the time, whatever you do in football, out of football, your family life, etc. And yeah, it's a challenge, and I find that's really sad about Anderson, and I just hope that. Well, not I hope, but there should be more things out there for players in that respect when they come out of football to give them some support in terms of financial decisions and stuff like that, so they don't go down like Henderson's path here.
I agree with you entirely, mate. And I think that's the most important essence of any message underlying, despite what this series is all about, chatting about relevant topics and what's going on in the world of football. But in the current ambience of the current feeling which has been generated here from that sadness is another bit of sad news which came up this week. So Ipswich legend George Burley was diagnosed and is being treated for cancer. And it's a bit of a shame when, on the back of Sven Goran Eriksson the other week, and now this news for George Burley. But I think that sort of position of Sven is allowing people like George Burley, who have gone under the radar and perhaps been forgotten about, mate, to come out and say, yeah, I'm here battling. Yeah, I'm got this going on. But yet no one seems to know about this because it's that almost suffering in silence, mate.
Yeah, I think everything gets covered over, doesn't it? And it's inspiring that Sven spoke about his story. Though it was very sad, it was inspiring that he had courage to talk about it. Same with George Burley here. And we could even say with Craig Shakespeare that recently passed away. God rest his soul. It's really sad because it's them sort of thoughts you get in your head. If they've been at a top flight level of football, they should be pretty healthy. They should be okay. That's the normal assumptions you get, isn't it? But then it comes to when you hear stuff like that and you think, well, they are humans after all, and everyone gets it. Anything like it's shown with George Burley here, Sven Goran Eriksson, and Craig Shakespeare, So hopefully that the treatment that George Burley has, he fully recovers.
I hope he fully recovers too, as well, mate. And it's a very very sad and tough subject to always talk about when it comes to these things, mate. And it's horrible to see for anyone go through. And me and you have sat and had a different discussion on a different series as part of the podcast about some of these health issues that are very apparent. That has shared awareness and perhaps a support network and reaching out and making sure the importance of that exists, mate. And I know how particular of an interest this sort of topic is to you, mate, and how important it is from a really selfless but caring and supportive kind of point of view you will make behind those words that you say when it comes to these topics, mate.
Appreciate it. It's just, I think as well with football world, let's face it, we can discuss, we can have different opinions, we can say things that we agree with, disagree with, we can, rage at what we've just said today with Vange or whatever, or for referee or whatever. But again, they're just human at the end of the day, and they want to do their best for something that is their line of work for their team, their club, their fan base, if it's anyone involved. And that's what football does do, is if there is any bit of adversity in there with, say, illness, the football world comes together. And that's what makes it a really, truly touching sport in that respect.
I think it has always made very touching. And if you're not writing this book of football poems or poems to do with sport, mate, I'm going to be very disappointed, because the way that you put words together and when you talk like that, I just love sitting back and listening to you, mate. So as always, very touching when it comes to these sort of stories and on a basis of that. But just to take maybe more of a positive turn, but building on some of the things that you say there about interlinking with a club and a world coming together, about sharing some stories about being more open and transparent. And this has got a link to Spurs by their former manager being club president these days of FC Porto. So they've introduced a new thing called the Transparency Portal, a new platform which will be on the club's phone app, where information about the club in terms of what they're going to divulge publicly, including player transfer costs, agents, commissions, financial reports, including loans, stakeholder percentages, and more, will be shared with the fans. What's your thought about this?
Well, that's a different slant on things, isn't it? But I think it's unique. But if it's a successful thing, then it might see supporters. It shows supporters in a different perspective of their football club, how it's being run. But that can go this way in a really good way, or it could go really in a bad way. I think, in a sense, it could be a good thing, because people wonder what happens with their football club. Also, I think that's quite refreshing, that though they're a huge club over in Portugal and that they've had a lot of success, unfortunately, I can't see a lot of Premiership clubs taking the same boat in that. Can you?
And I think so, mate. And I think that's part of it, because I think, again, what you said there, whether this could be very good or very bad, I think this could go one or two ways, depending on what scrutiny the club will be under, and just even putting more accountability on yourself as club president, in terms of the analysis, in terms of the insights that will be taken by the wider stakeholders within this. And I think even from political internal level, to push this through as an idea would have been a lot of work to push through. But I think that stems from the culture which has been instilled at Porto, being a very open and transparent club. But when it comes to, when you were talking about it, mate, there is no way on earth I don't think Spurs would ever go down this route of the model because of the kind of club that they are. And I don't see a lot of United being part of this. I don't see a lot of Chelsea being part of this, but these are three clubs which are always being scrutinised for wanting or a need to be more transparent and open. And yet this might suit someone like them in terms of those three clubs, but I don't think they'd ever go for this approach.
No, neither. And I think that's a shame because people need to know what they're putting their money into with the club, really. If they're spending so much on on the club on a weekend when it comes to matches, say, or whatever, they need to see where it's being reinvested into. And that's where I think football can become you can see the very dark side to football. You see a lot of people in there that's in it, you could say, for greed, unfortunately. That could be players, that could be owners of football clubs. And the only team that I can really see that would follow with that model, because they are quite transparent and they've got a refreshing approach about them, is Brighton.
Good shout. Good shout. I agree with you there, mate.
But I can't see excuse me, I can't see many other teams taking suit in that, not for top six anyway.
Definitely an interesting one to see how that plays out at Porto. But this was an interesting one in terms of perhaps something that could do with more transparency. So Nicolas Jackson has almost a 9-year deal because of the 2-year extension to play at Chelsea. Now, I was a bit taken back by this. I like Jackson. I just don't think he's got going yet for us at Chelsea. I think there's a lot of potential there. So, if we decide to sell him, I think, when you look at the business side and the assets which could be tied up in him, we could try and generate a lot of return on him and investment. But then if he flops, then we're stuck with a player for a long period of time. We could lose out on a lot of money. But very interesting that he's almost agreed or has agreed a 9-year deal with Chelsea.
Staggering, isn't it?
Insane, mate. Insane.
I mean, I just remember for days that you used to sign a 5-year contract and that was that. Now it's a 5-year plus a extension on top of that for an extra year, maybe, if you've met some bonuses or whatever. That's where a lot of, again, when it comes to top flight football, I feel it's been more run as a business than it is as a football club. And what I mean by that is they look at it in a sense and see their profits, their margins, their losses and everything like that. Well, Nicolas Jackson, I mean, he hasn't hit the ground running yet with Chelsea, as you say. Can you see him running with the ground? Can you see Chelsea making a profit on him in the future, even though he's under this long deal now?
I think it's tough, mate. I think it's very, very tough. I'd like to see him perhaps hit some form and get into, playing well. He scored 17 in 44 games last year for us. Was not bad for a first Premier League season, but it's still not as consistent as it needs to be. He scored 2 in 5 for us, but he's not a Drogba. He's not that big sort of strong striker that we need, and we sort of almost had that in Lukaku a little bit. We tried to get it with Morata and it didn't work out. We tried to do it with Torres and it didn't work out, but we need someone like Jackson. I hope he does come out and hit the ground running. And I'll just quickly looking upon his stats, right? He's a 23-year-old striker. He currently plays for Senegal. He's played 16 times for Senegal. He has never scored for them.
Wow, I didn't even know that. I would have thought he'd have got a goal for Senegal by now. Yeah. It's quite an interesting slant how Chelsea have taken that. Again, I just like he's on a 9-year deal. Yeah. I've got no words really.
It's definitely an interesting one. And I think some of the news which is coming out at the moment where Chelsea's ownership seem to have almost fallen out with each other, and whether Ted Boehly's going to buy out the partners or whether the partners going to buy him out. I think this is a very interesting time for us as a club in terms of the next approach, and we're almost sort of destabilizing ourselves. And I was listening to, I believe, Sky Sports the other day, and they were talking about how Chelsea are trying to build on a lot of stability and trying to still overcome some of the structure which was in place when Roman Abramovich was in charge. Now, when you look at the sort of model which we changed to, and now we're looking already partners buying each other out, we're looking at these long-term deals. as much as there seems to be a lot of ideas of structure behind it, we seem to have fallen into the camp almost of Man United, where there's a lot of instabilities and a lot of the fans don't know what's going on, a lot of media criticism. And we look at Spurs, but they seem to have a lot of stability. Everything seems to be in place at Spurs. This is what's happening. This is what is going to happen. This is who the shot caller is, and this is the long-term plan. Now, Chelsea and United are always aspiring to do that at the moment, but their business just doesn't seem as clean cut as it is at Spurs at the moment.
No, I think this is it though. Is you can go from playing safe to being absolutely reckless, but again, there don't seem to be no. When I say no middle, there's no risk. There's no one that seems to. When I say with no one, that's wrong. Teams do take risks, I suppose. Clubs do take risks. That's where I feel Spurs again have come a bit unstuck. Is yes, we know what we're doing, but we're too safe. We don't do too many risks. If we did a few risks here and there, I'm not saying all the time, but here and there, it might change your mentality within football clubs somewhat. I think everyone feels a bit comfortable at Spurs in terms of players, because I feel that for players, I'm going to say, I feel that for players are a bit mollycoddled. Is that the right way of saying it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
mollycoddled.
I think they are. For players are. Management not so much, but for players are. Because, I mean, you take, for example, we've got, as a backup left back, really, we've got Ben Davies, seasoned pro, but he's been there 10 years now. Again, that really, if you're someone that's successful, you need to change that every now and again to keep it fresh. That's what Fergie did with Manchester United. He kept freshening it up, and that's why they were so successful all the time, because there was no one that was there for more than 2 minutes. They did a season or two, they did their job, but he still outed them, and then he brought some fresh blood in, and they got on and continued. It's not against Ben Davies, because again, in this rare day, it's very rare you see players stay at clubs for like 10 seasons, let's face it. But I don't know. I think it's just, yeah, for players are treated in that way, and when it comes to managers, they're just outed in the space of no time. Unfortunately, it's just it's a really weird way of how he's got it set up there, Levy. It just doesn't seem to scream and think, right, we're ready to compete now. We're ready to, but do it on a consistent basis. I mean, we did under Poch. Don't get me wrong. We got regular Champions League football under Poch, but since then, it's gone downhill and worse. I mean, realistically, that's how I feel again with Spurs. It's weird. There was a phrase that came to my mind, but I can't think of what it is. But it seems like the higher the status that you have for Spurs, in terms of whether that be a player with an ego or a manager with an ego, it doesn't fit right. It doesn't end well. And yet we're trying to aspire to be a big club.
Again, interesting talking points, mate. And I think it's always that perspective in terms of, as you say there as a Spurs fan, what your aspirations are from, that internal point of view, and how that's remitted to yourselves, and that general feeling consensus around the fan base of who you're trying to be and who you're currently at and how you're trying to compete to get there, I think is definitely an interesting place. I think when you've got a club like, Aston Villa at the moment, who've gone out and appointed Unai Emery and the sort of moves they've made in the transfer market, and the current maybe moves by Brighton and their appointments of managers and what they're doing in the transfer market, they're two clubs who are screaming ambition, ambition, ambition. Whereas you could sort of even put West Ham in that by trying to go out and get Lopetegui on top of Moisey by the signings that they've made, that they are trying to compete and look at that ambition, ambition, ambition. It depends whether Spurs, again, on the back of whether they keep Postecoglou and invest heavily in their squad, or whether they sack Postecoglou and make a move for a different type of manager. I think it's going to be interesting, because they tried to scream ambition in a way by going for your Contes and Mourinho's and tried to go for serial winners, and it hasn't worked out. And again, it depends on what kind of club Spurs want to be, whether they want to be a Premier League club and try and challenge and be consistently sustainable by having a long-term manager who can bring youth players in is going to be another story, or whether they try and compete. So I think it's very interesting times for all clubs at the moment in the Premier League and what position they're going to try and stand in.
I totally agree, but I think this is it though. Is again, that's where I give praise and credit, because I know I've said it already in this pod, but I absolutely love how Brighton run their football club. It's just something special. How they run it and how they recruit is just another level. It's outstanding, really, and they deserve every bit of praise they get. But I think they go under the radar somewhat, and I think they should get more praise than they really do, because it's all about, again, with the top 6 clubs and stuff. But you don't hear on Sky or whatever with Carragher or Neville even say, well, look at what Brighton's done. They've built on what staying up in the Premiership, and they've built on it, got into Europe last season. They've appointed a manager this season that's very young, younger than some of the players there, but they're still achieving good things. They're still recruiting well. But that seems to go under the radar, and I find that a bit sad, really.
Definitely sad, mate. Definitely. 2 last points from me, mate, before we move on to your activity, which I'm looking forward to. Just to touch upon the Steve Bruce sort of essence. So Steve McLaren with Jamaica opened up a very good account of himself. 0-0 in the first game. A bit of a shame to have drawn, but a good starting point for him and a clean sheet. And then he won on and beat Honduras 2-1 away from home. They've currently got games now in October, two games on the turnaround. So definitely interesting to see how they play out. And then they don't have a game until June, so quite an extensive period where
That
they
is a
don't
long
play.
break, isn't it?
A huge break, mate. So it'd be interesting to see whether they get some friendlies in there, but not a bad start from him. And a video now, which I sent you the other day, and you asked whether I could include it. I'll play it and see what happens with YouTube regulations after. But this video, which is very interesting.
Supporters over here beside me, moan and get forward, screaming rubbish at me when we're 1-0 down. We've just played now 6 games where I recognise centre forward. And I have to be honest with you, I think our level of performance has been outstanding. If they don't want that, I'll move on then. If that's what they want. Get someone else to do the job. I'm sick and tired of it. Just a miserable, moany lot. What's wrong with them? Get behind the group. Get behind the team. So I feel that way about it. I'm delighted for the boys, delighted for the players, delighted for our supporters that come up the Gateshead and clapped us off. But I'm hearing this out here. I don't like it. You know, if they're going to be negative, go off somewhere else and be negative. It's their money, they can do what they want, but I can say what I want on here as well, and how I really feel, because I don't pull no punches. Moaning and groaning.
Yeah, and obviously just speaking on the football, for the 90 minutes it looked like a really good battle, a really good test between 2 top teams.
Yeah, we've got young lads that read the social media. I don't read it, I'm not on it. I've got young lads reading social media. I've got stuff on social media going against my goalkeeper. Does that help, does it? Does that help everybody? All geniuses now. They want to clap you off, don't they? Yeah. You know what happens in life? When you're in the tough times, you see the real characters, the real people. That's what I'm looking for. Character. In this group. Character. I want our fans to come with us with it. There's a message for you. All right? Do not edit that, by the way. I want that to go out, because that's very important. Because we're very open and very honest with our supporters. But when I'm hearing all negativity, when we're playing well, good goal by Altrincham, by the way, good goal on the counter-attack, fair play, good goal, good. Justin's a good player, pace. And I've got to listen to that moaning, I'm here. Just relax, I know what I'm doing. I took this team over, bottom of the table. Have a look where you are. Yeah? There's a lot of other teams below us. That's how I feel about it. I'm very, very angry and frustrated. If any fan wants to come see me, my door's open. Come in and see me. Have a cup of tea with me. And come and see me. And I'll explain where we're at and who's injured and what's happening. No Tavares, no Brown, no Kabamba, no Collins. Who else is missing? Coker, just come back. You know, get behind this young group. Look at Joe Roy tonight. Outstanding. Joe Grimwood, outstanding performance. Unbelievable. Chapman, what a player. Brunt, character. So I want us to get behind our players, not moan at them, not sing when we're winning. I want us to be a proper football club. All over here is moaning about the chairman. The beer's not good enough, that's not good enough. Come on, man, get behind the group, get behind the team.
And you obviously in that you obviously.
By the way, there was only 900 odd fans here tonight. That's what it was announced as 12, but it was 900 here. Yeah, we're a big club, aren't we?
how important is it to keep the hive the fortress that it can be?
Yeah, it help if we brought more than 900 supporters here. You know, if we can get 2,000, that'd help the chairman. That'd help us get a centre forward. If people start buying more tickets and buying beers and sweets and all that at the Hive, well, apparently that's not good enough. All I heard is moaning. So that'd help. Yeah. Do we have to rely on Tony? Keep relying on Tony's pocket, his grandkids' money. You know, their inheritance. Nah, just keep going Tony's fault. Yeah. Come here, spend your money, get this place rocking. I've no problem sending players in there that are injured that from 12 o'clock go to be with the supporters. I want togetherness. We can't splinter away.
Yeah, that was a very brutal, honest interview. That was, wasn't it? I mean, what did you make of that when you listened to that? Sorry, I can't hear you, Luke. What did you say, mate?
Sorry, mate. Yeah, I feel a lot of positivity when it comes into that. You know, a manager being very open and honest of what he expects from his squad, what he expects from the fans, especially when you look at a small club. Well, I say small club compared to a Premier League team, right, where you can get the fan base behind you, where you can make it more of a community-style club, where you get them behind you fighting in the terraces in terms of for the support of Barnet. I think I felt a lot of positive energy in terms of his expectations rather than downgrading his squad and having to go at them. It's more of you get behind us as a club. You stop moaning and get behind. You spend the money and we'll invest. And it's look at the work that's been put in. Recognize what that has been. Stop complaining. We're in a good position. We all keep fighting. And if you don't want that, I'm happy to leave and see whether the grass is greener. So I took a lot away from that interview. I thought it was quite a positive interview. And I think it's definitely one where it's generated some interest to go and see some of the work by Barnet, what's going on behind the scenes, how they play. So it's generated some interest for me, mate. But I felt positive. How about you?
It was quite refreshing, wasn't it?
For
it
sure,
was
mate.
quite refreshing for a manager to come out to have a little laugh when he said about for beer's not good enough. That because people's complaining. But on a serious level, I felt that it was very open, quite upfront, quite transparent, as we were saying earlier in the episode tonight. And I wouldn't be against more managers doing that because I think it does need something like that to inject a bit of unity within a club. To be fair, I mean, Ange did it slightly last season when it comes to that Arsenal Man City situation. All right, it's a different situation, but I felt, again, with non-league, and I absolutely loved that bit when he said, "You know, in life, who's true to you when you've through your tough times." You know, he made it relatable as well as a football, and actually know me with football analogies and stuff like that in life. I thought that was just brilliant from Brennan there. So top work from Gaffer. And I heard that they won Saturday against Braintree, and that he was doing a meet and greet with supporters should they wish him for bar before the game or something. So I wonder how that went.
I'd definitely be interested to see how that went, mate, especially if it was a recorded session. But definitely, I'm glad that they've won because if you come out and you're talking like that, then you lose. You almost bring in a gun to your head in that position almost when it comes to that sort of thing. So I'm glad that they've done well on Saturday. I'm glad that there was positive result on the back of what he said. So definitely an interesting sort of piece where a lot of what we talk about is always interesting, mate. I like to hope so anyway for those who are listening. But mate, it's time for the activity and we're going to draw up the interest even further.
Ooh, no pressure, mate. No pressure.
No pressure at all.
So I've got to now get these. So let me just try and see what I can do. Hang on a second. What we'll do then is we'll just do a little bit of recapturing and talking about them as players for a bit, and then next week we'll go into testing each other. All right.
Yeah, no worries at all, mate.
Okay, so Adel Taarabt, what do you think of him as a footballer?
Baller, someone who sits in the Ravel Morrison category, someone who I wish I saw play a little bit more. But every time I hear a story about him, I love listening to him. But what a player he was. I think he generated moments of magic, just not consistently. And he is one of those, when you talk about players in that category, it's a shame not to talk about him in a higher sense and a more positive position like Ravel Morrison. And I know when Neil Warnock spoke and I listened to his interviews, I mean, he went to Middlesbrough for a bit and Abdul texted him going, Gaffer, I'm fit again. Will you sign me? And he went, no, I signed you once, Abdul. That was it for me. So I was quite taken back by that. I thought it was a great little story, that. But someone who I it's a shame that he didn't have a bigger career.
Yeah, absolutely. He had a bit of swagger about him, didn't he?
That's it, mate. That's it.
Okay, so I don't know if you can see from that, probably not or not. Do you
Oh,
remember him?
yes, this is Braid Hangland. He played for Fulham. And I'm not saying that because his name was on the top. He is just someone who I remember who stood out, and he played alongside Paul Konchesky and Roy Hodgson in that squad. I think they had Clint Dempsey in there. And they just had a nice sort of feel to them, that type of squad, Fulham. When you're in the Premier League, Craven Cottage, it'd be a Saturday night, and it'd be Santanta Sports, and you'd hear Jim Beglin talking, and you'd be watching these types of games, mate. So, yeah, Braid Hangland, I thought he was an all right defender, and definitely a throwback, and that's when Fulham had a nice kit as well.
Yes,
What's your
absolutely.
thoughts, mate?
He was a solid defender, and as you say, for Santenta days, and oh god, for Fulham European run as well. In the Europa, was it Europa League? They got to the final but lost to Juve.
Yes, they did. Yes.
So yeah, good times. Yeah, he was just a hard nut, weren't he? The old school defender, I'd call him.
He was definitely strong for sure, mate, as well.
Absolutely. Here's the next fella. Do you remember him?
No, I don't, mate. And I know the name is again on the top there, but even then, I'm like, do you know what? He doesn't stand out to me.
So Brian Oviedo, it's just a name that just sticks out in my mind. When he was at Everton, then he joined Sunderland as well under Moisey, and yeah, just one of them names that stick out in your mind. But he never used to get many games at Everton purely because Leighton Baines was always in the team. But he wasn't a bad
Bainesy.
baller actually.
I don't remember much about him, if I'm being honest, mate. He's not someone who screams at me as like a forgotten player, a little bit like Hangland there, or even a player who should generally be remembered. Like, he doesn't stick out for me. But you had a consistent Baines who played for many years and was a good Everton player.
Yeah. Here's next fella.
Oh, yes. His name, without looking, I'm trying to recall Glenn Whelan.
Nope. Good guess though, but it was in the same team as him.
Oh, this is someone who played, I think, five-a-side football years ago. And if you ever saw that photo of him, he looked horrific in a lot of what people said. Charlie Adam.
Yes.
Charlie Adam. Oh, mate. A bit of an unknown quantity, Charlie Adam. Definitely an interesting sort of player to look back upon. Did you ever see that photo of him years ago, mate, when that came out?
No, I didn't. You have to share that out with me next week.
I'll have to look for that one, mate. I'll make a note of that to find that for you next week.
Excellent. But I mean, he was a brute in his day, weren't he? I mean, mind
Huge
you,
brute, mate.
that whole Tony Pulis side was a brute. You wouldn't want to cross them in a dark alley, would you, of the night time?
Well, I read something yesterday, mate. I can't remember who they played, but I read it yesterday whereby Tony Pulis's mum had died on a match day or a game of that on a day of a game, and he wasn't present for the first half. And he turned up through the first half after they were 1-0 down, and they went on to win 2-1. So I think that shows the essence of the type of manager Tony Pulis was. But just a little bit of a story here for you, mate. I played for a club called Pale Harriers when I was younger, and I remember my dad was a gaffer for a little bit. He took over the grassroots side at under 11s, under 12s, and we were invited to go up to the day to watch Stoke City play. And we all turned up in our new nice tracksuit tops and stuff. It took ages to get there. I remember the coach journey back took ages. But we went out to watch Stoke because Tony Pulis had played for the same club and had the connection whereby he invited the Pale Harriers to go up and watch a game every year. So that was a pretty surreal moment. And Tony Pulis's niece was a year above me in school, and I was actually good friends with her for a couple of years. So he is someone who went to the same school as I went to. So it's a little bit of a personal accolade story there, mate.
Wow, that's a small world indeed, isn't it?
Definitely, mate. Definitely.
Okay, next fella.
Oh, yes. Demba Ba, what a boy. What a boy. Going on and scoring that goal past Stevie G when he had that slip. I loved Demba Ba. Just simply an underrated player, was always linked to be the next Drogba. And his story into football was fascinating. So he was someone who wasn't with a club. He went round and rang every agent and club and went on trial with them and was literally sleeping on the floor of friends' houses in France to seek these opportunities. What a player he was, mate. And he was part of that squad with Papa Cisse and Cheick Tiote, who Cheick Tiote is no longer with us, but Papa Cisse went on and scored that amazing outside foot goal against Chelsea, just to extend on that one there. But what days it was for Newcastle. But yeah, Demba Ba, Chelsea, great.
Yes. This fella.
El Hadj Jufi, another Sam Allardyce favourite. He's and Neil Warnock favourite as well. He sort of sits in the same category as someone with a big personality, someone with a lot of skill and talent, but who could be a bit of a fruity character without throwing some superlatives within there. But I like Jufi. He was a player I regularly scored on signed on FIFA back in the day. There was just something about him that I liked, and El Hadj Jufi.
Next fella.
Fraser Campbell.
Yes.
I remember him because I remember going over to my friend's house when I was younger. And they were literally, Dean Windass was playing for this squad as well. He was out on loan from Man United. I think they played in the playoff final, and they won that day as well. And he's just someone which I again played with on FIFA, and would call back to United and try to make him into a next superstar players. But yeah, Fraser Campbell, I liked him because his name was Campbell, and whenever you see a player who has his name of someone who was a great player, i.e. Saul Campbell, then I'm like, yeah, they're a great player. Same with the Coles, Ashley Cole, Joe Cole, Carlton Cole.
Yeah. With Fraser Campbell, though, it never worked out for him, did it? Because he had moves to Spurs and United, but it just flopped, didn't it?
One of those, wasn't he around that time when you made all those signings like Rafael van der Vaart, Giovanni Dos Santos, and
Something like
Roman
that, yeah.
Pavlyuchenko, around that era, wasn't he?
Yes, he was, yeah. Yeah, it's such a shame, really, because I would have liked to have seen what he did, but he was quite injury-plagued as well, from what I can remember.
A shame, really. A shame.
This fella.
Oh, Gabia Bonlahor. Again, someone that I used to sign on FIFA. Just he was just someone that I liked. I remember there was a time when we always spoke about the three fastest players in the Premier League: Gabia Bonlahor, Aaron Lennon, Theo Walcott, and that still stands out with me reading that in a Match magazine when I used to get those when I was younger, mate. And perhaps not everyone's cup of tea. Now he's on TalkSport, and when you reflect back on his career, remember him making his debut for England, and just someone who I didn't mind as a player, and just had an okay career.
Yeah, no, I remember for days with them. I think those in European football under Martin O'Neill, weren't they?
Yes, they did qualify for a bit, and he always, for me, always sort of suited a bit of a Spurs back then. He just had a sort of Spursy essence about him, I think.
Yeah, good shout, good shout.
This beast. Mido?
Nope.
John Almander? Nope.
Nope.
Is he Turkish?
I mean, that's a good question. Not sure.
Oh, not Ivan Campo.
Yeah, it is Ivan Campo.
Ivan Campo. Yes, got it in the end, mate. I think it's Spanish, maybe. I don't know. We'll have to look that one up. What a squad of players assembled by Sam Allardyce when he signed Fernando Hierro, Ivan Campo, and some of the other players, Joski Jaskalainen, who were sat in that bottom squad. The Reebok Stadium. I always loved that sort of bottom logo on their kit there. I just remember when I used to play with them on FIFA quite regularly, trying to get them up into the Premier League. Just liked Bolton, and they're sort of a club where Yeah, I don't mind Bolton. I don't hate them. I don't mind them.
No, I remember because me and my friend was talking about Prime Bolton going back a few weeks ago, and we were saying, "Do you remember when Gary Megson was in charge of Bolton and he led them to a draw uh, against Bayern Munich in Europa League?" And I was like, "Nope, I can't." And he showed me footage, and I still didn't remember watching that game. But wow, Channel 5 football, European football, those are days.
That was a complete throwback, mate. And the fact that Gary Megson managed them was something that I completely blanked out from my mind at one point as well. So good throwback, mate. Good throwback.
Do you remember him?
Did he play for Middlesbrough?
Yeah, Middlesbrough. He was also on Arsenal's books.
Oh, I don't remember being on my Arsenal's books. I can't recall his name without having to look at the top, mate, if I'm being honest with you. If he was part of Middlesbrough squad, I remember this was sort of the Gareth Southgate era, I think.
I think it was. Yep.
I think they had Mido who played for them. I think I vaguely remember that outline of a Middlesbrough team.
Yeah, Jerome Aliadidier.
Ali, yeah, as I used to
Yeah.
say.
Yes.
Yes, I recall him and his name sticking out more than his performances, to be honest, though, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. Next, bit recent.
Bit more recent. Currently at Barcelona, if I'm being correct there. Good player. Again, another one of these City players who moved on. Quite surprised that he did. A good player all around would be a good signing still for any squad, i.e., Spurs, maybe an Arsenal could be a shout for him. If Aston Villa were a bigger club, then he'd fit, Unai Emery style. Yeah, good player, liked him.
Same here.
Oh, Kevin Davies. Play for England. I think he had maybe one or two caps, maybe. Again, part of that Bolton squad. Again, I just really like that kit. An underrated player, people say. Perhaps should have had more caps for England. Other people say that he should never have been capped for England. But he just seemed like one of those players who would never stop playing. And I just, I remember him playing and being an all right player. And I signed him a couple of times on Foot Manager. Especially when City first got taken over, and they had like the likes of Patrick Vieira and Boateng and Nigel de Jong and that sort of kind of esque player. And he was just one of the players I'd signed from the Premier League, knowing he'd be an all right player, but realistically should never have signed him for City, because that is definitely a move Mark Hughes was making.
I always remember he used to get booked an awful lot as well.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, a lot of yellow cards. And didn't he score on his one of England caps as well?
Yeah, I think he scored in his debut. I remember him coming off the bench at halftime. I can't recall whether he made the same debut as David Bentley. I remember David Bentley coming on at halftime, and his beard looked slick and his hair was looking good, and he just brought a David Beckham pearlesque about him. And I remember going, he looks pretty cool. He does. He's like a Bond Beckham sort of player, but never worked out for him.
Very true. Last one for this week, my friend.
Oh, Loic Remy. He played for QPR when they had that Lotto kit, and I'm not sure if that was the Premier League stage where they had like Rio Ferdinand, Anton Ferdinand. They had a bit of money with them. They had Harry Redknapp, who managed them for a bit, and I think off the top of my head whether Crouchy went in there for a bit. I'm trying to think of the England midfielder who went in for a bit as well from Chelsea. Loic Remy, not a bad player. Remember him being one of those players on FIFA back in the day where he had a lot of potential and would hit it for very high numbers with, the likes of Pato and all those who would hit like 98, 99. And, you had young David Villa, young David Silva. You'd have Samir Nasri. You'd have all these young players who had a lot of potential.
Can I just say, Samir Nasri, what a baller he was in his day.
But honestly, mate, you would load up FIFA and that amazing soundtrack would come on, and you'd be like, right, I'm going to sign him, and him, because they're going to become absolute ballers in this game. And the they were great days, mate, and some great players. But mate, I gotta say, like, really enjoyed that sort of last 20 minutes, and what throwbacks in terms of some names there. So you've really set the benchmark for next week for me to find you some players, mate. But there's some players I got in the back of my mind which I think I'm gonna catch you off with a little bit. But mate, like when you sort of talk about like those Premier League years which we went through, like Santander Sports and Sky Sports, and the lineups of these games, Andy Gray, Richard Keys, and
Yeah.
the type of commentary which took place, and these type of the teams managed by Harry Redknapp with Bolton, Gary Megson's, your George Burleys within there. You even throw that back to when Mourinho was there, and they go on to like Avram Grant and Carlo Ancelotti was there, Juan Dan Ramos for Spurs, Arsene Wenger back at Arsenal, Fergie at United, Stuart Pearce and Mark Hughes years at Man City, mate.
Yeah.
They were the
And
absolute
also,
days, mate.
this man behind me, Mr. Brownie, when he did for half-time telling off.
Oh yes, Phil Brown, yes, former Southend manager. Yes, when they had Jimmy Bullard, and I think they had a player called Giovanni, and
Giovanni, what a player! He had a boot on him, didn't he?
Yes, mate, and that's what I mean. Like throwing back to these squads in those days, mate, and the scenes from Hull City, and whenever you pick Hull City on Foot Manager, you always think of the Premier League stage. But yeah, mate, what days they were.
Throwback Central.
Mate, what an idea that was. Absolutely brilliant. I love that. A new lease of life to add in. But mate, that was quality. Really enjoyed that. Great shout.
Thank you.
That's right, mate. No, thank you for presenting that. So mate, I'm going to start ploying over the week some ideas for some of these players. So you've already picked up one there, Giovanni. I should have kept him as a quiet one there. But I got some players in my mind which might be some hidden gems within there. So I'm looking forward to how this plays out over the last few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Same here.
I love it, mate. And you're giving me more ideas as we think about this as well.
You're going to be in bed tonight and you're going to be like, I thought of a player.
Honestly, I was doing this with my boss the other week, right? And he's got an insane knowledge of ball, right? And he's just got quiz facts. And if you were ever going to have a quiz, he is someone bang on our team, right? And I forget now. He gave me one the other week, which was like someone who was scored in like for X amount of clubs in this and this league. I'm definitely gonna have to ask him and ask you next week. But it took me, and I roared them out. It was like I listed a load of names, and then I thought about it for days and days and days on end. And I went in, I went, it's him, and he went, yeah, mate. Like it was on my mind for days on end.
That's going to get me questioning now, isn't it?
I love it, mate. I love it. Absolutely. Well, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure to record this episode with you and, turn around your day a little bit with that Spurs loss, mate. But it's been great to wrap up the week and great to sort of kickstart a Monday on the back of this positivity. So, mate, your time is appreciated as always. And I look forward to releasing this content. And for anyone listening, there was a previous episode which has come out earlier today, also featuring Jordan and myself as part of another series, the Reflective Circle series. So Jordan's actually appeared across several different series at the moment. So he is part of the podcast super team and has come core as part of the presentations. But that's another episode to listen out and check out for. But mate, thank you very much. Have a great Sunday night, and I look forward to catching up with you.
Yeah, same to you, mate, and thank you for your time. Bring on next
Pleasure
week.
as always, mate. See you later, Jord.
See you later. Bye, bud.
Bye, mate.